choice. That's what we believe. We believe we're the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the ones going to the promised land. We don't think Jews are a part of God. No, Jews are nothing but another part of that same race of devils that come out of Europe. Black people are standing up. Black people are rising up, and they're starting fight.
We were slaves in Egypt. We belong to the Father, ain't no pledge of allegiance. We both to celebrate that killing that he didn't need you. We both to keep the holy days, don't be like the heathen. He said that for a reason.
Right. So it says here George Washington was the founding father of the United States, right? We know the story, right? But he was a slave owner who became uneasy with the institution of slavery, it says here, right? But provided for the emancipation of his slaves only after his death. So he didn't care. He only freed, I think, only one of them after when he died. Just want to show you something. So I googled George Washington slave owner, as you can see here, and these are the images I get. So let me just show you one real quick. All right, so you see this? Oh yeah, he had Negro slaves, right? This is the picture they always want to paint to us, right? A white man and a black man as a slave. A white man master, black man as a slave, all right? Got Dodge the Hijack. Here's another one right here. Zoom into this one. As you can see, again, they try to show a white master and a bunch of colored people as servants and slaves. So they show us a lot of portraits and drawings of George Washington, right? This is one of them, right? So in this portrait, there's like a Moor right behind him, as you can see. Some say that's William Lee, his servant, but we don't know. Is that really George Washington right here? Or who's George Washington? Or is that his advisor? There's some say this is his Moroccan advisor. That's what they say, that this is his Moroccan advisor, actually. All right, we're in the book. It says here George Washington, a biography by Douglas Southall Freeman, volume 2. This is from 1948, page 239 of this book. Searched by the colonel, and the immersion was to no purpose. The man had disappeared. Loudon had then to attempt to identify Pierre Fidel on the basis of Van Horn's description, added to what the traitor had said casually in his letter of himself and of his military position. What tall, dark officer was there in America, 38 years of age, unmarried, who had eyed the camp and was going to participate in the expedition against Fort Duquesne? The only officer who was known to Lord Loudon's informants as in any way answering to this description was Colonel Washington, George Washington, who was what tall, dark officer? Tall and dark. Washington. He was single. He had an aide. He was to share in the next march to the Ohio. As it changed, Lord Loudon had close at hand Captain David Kennedy, who had seen Washington in New York in March 1756, when the colonel was returning from the visit to General Shirley in Boston. Loudon consequently asked Kennedy for a description of the Virginian. All right, they're talking about George Washington. Washington said the captain was a man about 6 feet, of a black complexion, again, a black complexion with black hair, which he then wore in a bag. Looks like a foreigner, a strong man. Kennedy remembered Washington's companions, Mercer and Stewart, and recalled that Washington's uniform was blue, faced with red and laced, right? Black complexion, so-called black complexions, right? So when they mean dark, they do mean black, so-called black, dark complexion, so-called Negro, right? Remember, he is a descendant of a Huguenot. He does have Moorish blood, so this makes sense, right? Just want to show you guys again. I'm going to start with Nicolas Marteau, the Huguenot, right? Nicolas Marteau, the Huguenot. It says passenger and immigration list, 1500s, 1900s. Nicolas Marteau, a primary immigrant, arrival place, Virginia, 1620. Wow, 1620, right? What are they doing? It says here the trail of the Huguenots in Europe. The Huguenots in Europe. So George Washington's Moorish ancestor, Huguenot ancestor. And we go down through his daughter Elizabeth Marteau, who married George Reed. And they together had Mildred Reed, who married Colonel Warner Jr. The Warners and the Reeds got together. and they had Mildred Warner together, who married Lawrence Washington, who was coming from John Washington and Anne Pope. John was the first one, remember? And then we got Lawrence and their family coming out of England, as it says here, the Sulgrave Manor. That's where their old Wessington house was. So then Lawrence Washington and Mildred Warner, they had Augustine Washington, who got with Mary Ball, and together they had President George Washington, and he married Martha Danbridge. Now we're going to get a description of Martha Danbridge. You guys are going to see what she was physically described as. I'm going to show you that she was also a dark complexion. So on his mom's side, Mary Ball, her dad, Colonel Joseph Mataos Ball, George Washington's grandfather, and Mary Bennett. Remember the Bennett name? That's a Sephardic Jewish name. Sephardic Jewish name. So now we know through his mom's side, he does have also Sephardic Jewish Moorish blood. All right, continuing with George Washington again. So we got, he has Moorish blood. We know the Welsh, the English, a lot of the Scottish, the Anglo-Saxons. A lot of these people were Negro as well. So it's conjecture to say, he's white, half white or half Moorish, because, that side also is contested. He's already been described as black and dark already. We got his wife being called the Dark Lady. You guys starting to see the trend? It says here, History of the George Washington Bicentennial Celebration, Volume 1. This is from 1932. We're on page 225, Youth and Manhood of George Washington. It says here, the man himself, okay? Contemporaries of George Washington have commented that none of his portraits accurately resembled him. They don't resemble him. And a member of his immediate family is quoted as having said that picture of him painted by various artists all look very much alike, but are not really like the general himself. Do you see what they're telling you here? Who is that painting of? These body snatchers, whitewashed images. This is attributed to the fact that the expression of George Washington's face varied according to circumstances and the painter's side only in repose, right? So it's not him. His family members and all the people contemporary to his time are not describing him like that. A great similarity exists also in the word pictures penned by those who met George Washington at different periods of his life and under varying circumstances. One of the earliest of these depicts a handsome youth of 19, full height of 6 feet 2 inches, slender, blue eyes, an abundance of brown hair, and a clear, ruddy complexion. That does not mean white, so-called pale skin, or white man. That's the dodge to hijack. Ruddy, copper brown, reddish brown, copper, ruddy complexion. His manner, self-control, his speech well considered. Okay, he's ruddy. All those paintings of him are not him. They are not really like him. They don't resemble him. And we're in the book here, George Washington, a biography. And this is by John R. Alden. And I'm on page 11 of this book. So they're going to describe George Washington in this book here. Says he had property, he had prospects, and he was physically attractive, 6 feet tall. He was lanky, like many other Americans, like Jefferson and Lincoln. All right, just like Lincoln. Remember what Lincoln looked like? All right, he had rather long and lean arms and thighs, and he was flat-chested. He had strong but quite regular features, except that the upper part of his nose was unusually broad. All right, unusually broad nose. His face, like so many countenances of his time, exhibited the marks of smallpox. He had light blue eyes, all right, light blue eyes and brown hair, and was a vigorous male. A British officer who met Washington some years later reported that he had a dark complexion and a foreign look. A dark complexion and a foreign look. That's George Washington, okay? So break the spell, you guys see? All right, he has Moorish blood. He's being described as being a so-called dark-skinned complexion man, and by his contemporary